Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Fly Nubian Queen channel. I am Dr. Alicia with Coaching with Dr. Alicia. And oh my goodness, today we are going to do a video and we are all discussing and dissecting this compelling cautionary video from a lady by the name of Risa M. Tessa. And she has been viral all over TikTok for her series on Who TF Did I Marry? And she's exposing a lot of things that happened to her over the course of just a couple of years about her marriage to a man named Legion, who she calls. And myself and a couple of my very close therapy friends, we're going to dive into the complexities of online dating. We're going to unravel the dangerous patterns of love bombing as exemplified by Legion. And we're going to emphasize the paramount importance of self-love. What do you do when you're dating? What types of questions do you have? How are you going to slow things down from going way too fast? And we're going to be discussing key aspects to consider when you're seeking a therapist, someone who can help you navigate some of these relationship issues versus pastoral counseling. We got some ideas about that. And today I'm so thrilled to have an exceptional panel of experts on here with me. First, let's welcome Niquan Lewis. She is a renowned relationships and sex therapist. Let's bring her up. Everyone say hello to Niquan. And she's going to be joining us. She's from Houston, Texas. She's going to give her insights. Alongside Niquan is going to be Deborah Dantzler. Deborah, let's bring her up. And Deborah Dantzler is a psychotherapist from Atlanta, and she specializes in narcissistic behaviors. We had a really good conversation talking about Andrew Tate not too long ago. And also Niquan and myself, if you go back on Fly Nubian Queen, we talked about how to increase your sex life. So we talked about that on just a few days before Valentine's Day. And joining us new here, but definitely not new to online platforms, is Ayana Mayat. Welcome, Ayana Mayat.
Hello.
She is a fellow social worker. She's got a very good, deep expertise in relationship therapy. She works alongside her fabulous husband. They do all these fun videos on social media, particularly Instagram, and you can follow her at Black Love and Marriage. So let's get comfortable and let's dive into the world of modern dating. Let's dive into love. Let's dive into what to do. And before we dive in, though, I do want to have a disclaimer. We're all licensed therapists here, the four of us. But I just want to say, we're not diagnosing anybody. This is not therapy. This could be a therapeutic experience for you all. But conversations like today should not be taken as medical advice or therapy advice. We're not diagnosing anybody with your specific circumstances. Our content is just for educational purposes. So we're using illustrations from Risa that is not uncommon to a lot of us who are facing any sort of relationship challenges that she was brave enough to put out there for everybody. So we strongly encourage all of you all, if you're having some issues with your relationship, to please seek individual help, and consider reaching out to a licensed therapist, one of us. If any one of us resonate to you, be sure to reach out to us on a personal level to get some of the help that you need, the support that you need. But let's go on to our discussion topics today. I do want to talk about Risa's online dating. She began by talking about how she met a man online, and she went on this date with him, and because of the unusual circumstances around COVID, she kind of threw out some of the typical sort of criteria that she would normally have when dating someone, because I think COVID put us in a very vulnerable situation. It made it so that a lot of relationships were sped up. A lot of relationships that weren't going well fell apart. So it did a lot for us, and it made it so that she really, really ignored some of the red flags. So I just wanted to start with, we can start with Niquan. What did you notice in terms of the video of Tessa and how she approached online dating? And what can you identify that you've seen in some of the things that she talked about, how she could have protected herself from these potential red flags?
Absolutely. I am so happy that you brought up the dynamics of COVID. COVID, okay, let me just say this. There's so many people that are judging the situation, right? And so there are so many layers here. It's important to understand, as an LMFT, I look at things through a systemic lens. So I'm looking at how all parts of the puzzle are at play. Had it not been COVID, chances are she might not have been acting out of somewhat of a place of desperation. I can't say that, but she said it clearly. I didn't want to quarantine alone. And what I know, being a therapist at that time, there were several people that were struggling with isolation and just wanting human contact. And so, yes, she did throw caution to the wind. She didn't have any standards of relationship. I don't think she was really clear on what she wanted, her values, principles, and morals, things that we work with individuals every day on being clear on. But when you are isolating by yourself, sometimes those things, you not that you don't give a damn, but you are trying to get your needs met. And that's what I saw. I saw a person that was simply trying to get their needs met. There was a lot of consequence in how it happened. But that was a big thing that stuck out to me, was the dynamics, the things that how COVID affected and impacted people's mental, relational, and sexual health.
Oh, very good point. Yeah. I mean, she mentioned that she met him in March, and then 2 weeks later, COVID happened, and they had a point where they connected very well, but normally they would not have sheltered in place together, not knowing how long this was going to be. Interesting. Dr.
Not to mention, really quickly, COVID, the shutdown happened in March, but COVID had already been going on.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you ladies, but for me in my home, we were already like, can't nobody come in here, right? Before March. So that's important to take into consideration as well. That could have added to her desperation.
Interesting. Okay, Dr. Deborah, did you want to weigh in on that?
Yes. So one thing that I noticed, Risa Tisa used the word intoxicating to describe those initial interactions with Legion. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about love bombing, and he was using a specific type of love bombing that we'll talk about. But this idea that she was kind of drunk on dopamine, right? He was doing pushing all the right buttons and saying all the right things. And so that, coupled with the uncertainty of the times, Georgia shut down March 13th. That was it. All the offices shut down, everything. And so that isolation, that fear of loneliness, and you're already getting these wonderful shots of dopamine and feeling intoxicated because of the love bombing. Yeah, I mean, it was not an unreasonable decision, but it had a lot of consequences I love that she was really open with it too.
Yeah, I agree with that. It was very brave for her to put everything out there, but I get that you could see her going through a lot of emotions as she was talking about it. I mean, it's her way of kind of dealing with what happened to her. Very good. So Ayana, did you want to weigh in on this? The online dating, how it went fast. What's it been good for you?
Way too fast. As I was listening, I remember thinking, I had to go back, wait a minute, how long did they know each other? Even in that first date, when I think her car tire blew out. He met her and then went and bought her a new tire. And I thought, oh, boundaries. Geez, he's buying you a tire right off the top. No boundaries here. A lot of women be like, oh my goodness, I didn't have to pay for it, but also letting someone in and have access to you in a way that is really inappropriate or for a very first date. And then I recall her saying that as they walked into the restaurant, that they were holding hands. I said, wow, right? And so, I mean, just really echoing what Dr. Deborah has said, right, about the intoxication of love, because I think the thing for people to think about is that if you step out of your situation, or if we were listening to somebody, we would all say, that doesn't even make any sense. You're walking in holding hands on the first date, right? But we can't see ourselves a lot of times. And so that's why you have to properly pace your relationship, and you have to have a process that keeps you from allowing the emotions, to overwhelm you. But I do think she was quite under the influence of all the dopamine.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the public, I love what all of you all are saying, because I think that the public, y'all got to realize that it's normal. It's normal to, when you fall in love and you see person that you feel intoxicated with, that it's okay to feel that way. Mm-hmm. But you have to keep it all into perspective and know that you don't really know this person. Know in the back of your mind that true intimacy comes after the falling in love part, the disillusionment stage. And then that's when you really make the commitment to really get to know somebody. That's the real intimacy. Mm-hmm. But just the falling in love part, allow yourself to enjoy those wonderful feelings, but keep it into perspective. Right. Keep it into perspective for sure. So, hey, wait, we got a lot of people in the chat. How you doing in the chat, everybody? Misha Bell, welcome. Oh, Lord, Misha made a comment early. Yes, so appreciative to hear the professional therapist say about this. Kenya, thank you, Kenya. Kenya is here. She is real appreciative. Let's put her comment up. So I think that we'll talk a little bit more about professionalism, but yeah, I appreciate that comment, Kenya. Anyway, so we're here talking about this viral TikTok, and we're talking about how, this online dating situation, she's dating online probably because she's ready for a commitment. And sometimes it's very difficult to start a relationship with someone. And she mentioned he seemed to say the right things. He seemed to say exactly what I wanted to hear. And then when an opportunity came for them to shelter in place, they did it at her place because she had a nice get up, much nicer than him. Right. And so these things about love bombing came about, and I'm happy that you guys mentioned it. I think that maybe for this question, we will start with Dr. Deborah, who's sort of an expert in narcissism and this psychopathy sort of situations. It's one thing to kind of fall in love with someone. It's one thing to always, when you're dating somebody, you put your best foot forward. You want to show up. You want to make sure you don't, you look nice, put your makeup on, put your best foot forward, as long as it's connected to who and what you are. When you start being somebody totally different and presenting yourself in this different way, this is where you get into some real problems with psychopathy, and how this love bombing is not a way of putting your best foot forward, but it is definitely a way of manipulating somebody. Mm-hmm. And the psychology behind manipulating and being overly affectionate and taking things too far, talking about marriage on the first date.
Right.
Dr. Deborah, I'm starting with you. What do you have to say with this pattern?
Thank you, Dr. Alicia. So he was definitely, obviously, following a very clear pattern of love bombing, but he was doing a specific type of love bombing called future faking. He was selling her on a future. He was talking about buying the house. He was talking about marriage. He's talking about starting a family. He's talking about luxury vehicles. He's talking about basically you be a stay-at-home trad wife. Like, he is selling her a dream. He is selling her a fake future. Mm-hmm. And part of that is him mirroring, right? This is how actual mind readers and like tarot card readers and stuff, they take cues from, because we have these micro expressions, right? And if you say marriage, we get this little bit, and he say, oh, you want to be married, so yeah, I'm ready to settle down, and he just kind of pulls on those micro expressions to expand on that and sell you a dream. And so that future faking is very intoxicating, because you're seeing it. She said a lot of times, especially with the first house, I could see myself living there. I saw myself living there. She was living in the future. She had bought the dream. She drank it. She drank the dream Kool-Aid.
Yeah, yeah. He told her what she wanted to hear, and I think some of the mistake in that is not having a girlfriend, a best friend, somebody there to say, "Girl, something ain't right." Like, I watch all the Netflix videos and all the specials on the Tinder swindler. I watch all of that stuff. And I mean, did anybody else want to jump in, Nikwan or Ayana, about like how is it? It seems like even if she was intoxicated with this whole thing about falling in love, you're gonna have a girlfriend or a family member just be like, girl, you tell your friends about it. Where do you think that she made a mistake along this road before she even married him, where she felt like she couldn't talk to other people about what was going on with her?
I'll hop in.
Talk. Mm-hmm.
I think for me, it's going to go right back to that possible place of desperation. Like you said, not having a girlfriend, just with being isolated with COVID, and he's here in her presence, feeding all the things, right? And she doesn't have that girlfriend that might give her the side eye, like, hold on, friend, right? Like, because he's telling her all the things that she wants to hear. And so having that social support network, which just means like, your friends, your support, having that around you. You don't have to have a whole crew of people, but at least, one or two people that can, give you that support, to give you that insight. If you are lacking self-awareness, especially if you're coming from not having any, real human intimate connection, you're at a higher risk of falling for the Kool-Aid, drinking the Kool-Aid, right? As Dr. Deborah says.
Yeah.
And so it's imperative that we do that internal work. It's imperative.
Yeah, I think it plays more into her denial. Like there were signs that some of the things that she was saying, this future love bombing about what we gonna do, and it never happening. I think her realization of that, it was like this sense of denial that she did not want. She wanted to stay in this fantasy world and not deal with the reality of what was in front of her. And at any point, she could have just confronted him. I don't understand why she didn't have these conversations. Ayana, what do you have to say about all of this?
Yeah, I know. So many times you're like, oh, just have the conversation. Just say what it is. But the couple of things come up for me, no rules of engagement around dating. And I think people who are in the space of dating really have to have concrete, and I always say, write them down or type them up on a piece of paper, put them in a frame, go to Walmart, get a $3 frame and put them up in your room, because you have to be reminded about them, because as you're moving through life, as you all have already talked about, so much is happening at any given time that we will forget, conveniently get some amnesia. And so she didn't seem to have a framework in place in terms of how to properly date, like some way to hold yourself accountable. Like, okay, I have to know this, and this, right? This has to happen before this, right? This doesn't come until after this. So some things just have to be concrete. And I encourage people to think about what that looks like for you. And the other piece is, the support system piece is really, really, really incredibly important. But I don't take for granted, not to say she didn't, but I don't assume, let me say that, I don't assume that she or anybody has the right support system or has the right people around them. And, this is a lot of why we have created the community that we have, because we're like, you have to have the right folks. You can have people who ride or die for you and all of that, but they don't know what they're talking about, right? They're like, oh, girl, you hit it now, honey. Oh, he is the one, right? It's like, oh my goodness, tell me, and they're just they're living through you, and it feels really good. So I think having, again, as you talked about, whether it's professionals or a good, solid group of folks, or just a couple, it ain't got to be a group, right, of people to rely on. People have to ask themselves, do I even have that? If this is what I say I want to be married, I want to be in a committed relationship, then who is in my circle, or where am I moving that has somebody or somebody's doing that relatively well? Because there's no perfection, right? And I think that's something that's important to think about too.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Just she didn't have the right kind of people. And then there was at one point where her mother came and they were already married at that point. You know, her mom came at that point. Like, who marries somebody? You have to meet their whole, I don't know. You have to meet everybody in their family first to get married. But again, we talk about the vulnerability because she was pregnant at the time. That does nothing but make you more vulnerable.
Yes.
Just anybody who's been pregnant, it makes you look the other way with a lot of things, because that's putting you in yet another vulnerable situation. And maybe some people just feel like, you know what, they're already married, having this baby or something, it ain't for me to say, and so maybe her mom, I don't know why her mom didn't on some level say, oh, I got a whole bunch of things to say about him. Here's some positive things. Here's some things that I didn't know about. Like even just that whole process of them just getting married so quickly. I don't know at any point, she could have just said, listen, this is moving too fast. And I think that might be the best way to deal with somebody who's love bombing you, is to say, I'm sorry. Just like Ayana mentioned, hey, I have standards for relationships. This is moving too fast for me. This is uncomfortable for me. I think that we should take it slow.
Right.
My standards are that yes, I trust you, but trust on this level needs to be earned. And I have to put you in situations and let's date for a little bit. Let's just see where it's going. And having those standards may have slowed things down. And a person who wants to love bomb you, they're not going to be patient enough to hang around for that.
Right.
They're going to be gone because they want someone intoxicated by their promises. I mean, that's the really good mind control technique about promises. So everybody, hello, everyone. I'm trying to see who's in the chat. If there's any comments in the chat, let's see. We got Ralph. Hello, Ralph. Ralph, thank you for joining us. Go get a life already and start talking about other people. This is why y'all ain't got no man. What? I got a man. What you talking about?
I got one too.
Y'all got somebody.
Ralph.
So Ralph, I don't know what this is. I think Ralph brings a good point up. We're not here to judge.
Right.
No, absolutely.
We're not here to say what she did was stupid and this person is terrible. We're here to explain and understand. We're not excusing her behavior. We're definitely not doing any of those things. We're here to give something that went viral on TikTok. We're here to look at all of the things that she talked about. And there's so many jewels. And I think that if she was here today, she'd be very proud of what we're doing, because she has said herself, I'm putting this out there because I want people to know how I made so many mistakes, how I ignored the red flags.
Right.
I'm certain she won't do this again. And I'm certain she's
not the only one.
Go ahead. Who was mentioned? She was talking. Yes.
I just was saying she's not the only one, which was her goal, is to help someone, which is our goal, to help the people to understand what needs to happen when you are dating, what needs to happen with yourself first to make sure that you're in a space for dating, right? So this is definitely not about judgment. This is completely to, hopefully she sees this and she can, understand. Hopefully, Risa Tisa, girl, I hope that you have gotten some assistance.
Yeah.
And if not, contact one of us, because we will assist you with walking through just those mistakes that were made, because you're human. And if things are not put in place, one thing we didn't touch on, we don't know. What she said was she learned what goes on in this house stays in this house, which could be why she didn't share with her friends, why she didn't share with her mom. We don't know what she was taught as far as relationship goals, coming up. That could have contributed also to who she chose, what she listened to, and what she accepted.
Excellent. Yes, Charlie, thanks for weighing in. I'm sure he's a troll, but sometimes trolls bring up, sometimes people who sometimes trolls bring up really good things, really good points to make. So I was just reminded about the judgment piece because he was judging us. Just reminded us. So I'm going to play a clip. This is part 5. This is where she talks about her audio diaries. So I want to play this clip because I thought it was really interesting. Okay, let me see if I can speed it up because we don't have too many time. But let's listen. I'm going to play over here with my microphone. Let's listen to what she has to say.
I'm questioning all this stuff in my head out loud on my audio diaries. And then once again, I'm like, but look at what he's giving you. Like,
Too fast.
It wasn't a question about money.
Too fast.
Are we really
Is that too fast?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on.
Keep in mind, he's paying all the household bills.
I listened to it very fast.
I'm like, you can understand that, child.
I do. Okay,
You're good.
here we go.
Okay, part 5. Who the fuck did I marry? So I'm questioning all this stuff in my head out loud on my audio diaries. And then once again, I'm like, but look at what he's giving you. Like, he's paying. It wasn't a question about money. It was just a question of, are we really about to move into this house? And keep in mind, he's paying all the household bills. He still is. So we're supposed to close before Memorial Day. We didn't. There was an excuse. There was always an excuse with him. Always an excuse. And I didn't know enough about the process to question stuff because I really wasn't involved the way I should have been. And it was giving me a lot of anxiety. So I'm pregnant with a lot of anxiety. And if I'm going to be 100% honest with y'all, I was not expecting that I was probably going to have a healthy pregnancy because I was stressed. And what I was stressed about is I didn't know what was going on because I wasn't really involved the way that a normal relationship would be involved. Just being honest. So we did not close. We moved now into June. This is now going into June. Around June 5th, I looked at the house again on realtor.com. I don't know what made me do it other than, and I don't mean to sound super spiritual. I know that people are like, you may or may not believe in God, but I'm telling you, I believe with all my heart. Probably the Holy Spirit was like, look at that house on realtor.com. So I looked at the house on realtor.com. This was around June 5th. It showed that the house was off the market. And I remember being like, okay, wait, what does that mean? What does that mean? Because ex-husband is telling me, we're about to close on the house. We're about to close. It's our house. We got furniture, da-da-da. He's also telling me that he's been in contact with the realtor, his friend, who was telling him, this is what's happening next. Here's what's going on. So the guy that we initially worked with apparently is completely out of the picture. But again, I was not heavily involved. So I'm just like, let me look at the house. I see it's off market. What the fuck does off market mean? Like, now I'm really freaking out. So it shows the name of the real estate agent for the seller. I don't remember her name. I called her. And I said, I said, my husband and I, even though I wasn't married, my husband and I were looking at this house at 123 Main Street. And we really wanted to tour it, but now I'm showing it's off market. Is it not available? Or, I pulled that card. And she was like, oh, no, ma'am. The home closed yesterday. It closed June 4th. Again, there are certain dates I just remember. And I said, oh, it closed June 4th? I was like, really? And she said, yes, ma'am. She was like, my sellers sold the house. And I was like, oh, man, okay. Well, I said, my husband and I really wanted, we love the pictures of it. And we're getting ready to start a family. So I would have loved to have been able to, have the opportunity to see it. I asked her something. I don't remember the specific question I asked her. And I know why I asked the question because I was anticipating that my boyfriend at the time was going to have some sort of excuse. So I asked her something about the buyers. And I remember, and somehow, again, forgive me, I don't remember the question I asked her, but the answer was that it was an older white couple. So I get off the phone with her, I record an audio diary, and in the audio diary, I specifically say, okay, there is no house. He's going to have to get out of this lie somehow. Because now I realize, at the very least, he was lying about him being the one who was under contract. I knew enough about that. So I was like, what, how is he going to get out of this? Again, I've listened to the audio diary in 2024. I literally said in that audio diary, how is he going to get out of this lie? And I was trying to think of ways on how he's going to do it. And something said to me, because I say it on the audio diary, I said, he's going to say it's a bad deal. And he's going to say he wants to pull out. Y'all keep in mind, I am pregnant. So I had a decision to make. As ugly as this decision was, I made the decision, you're about to have a baby with this man. He's paying all the household bills. let him get out of the lie. And that's what I did. I purposely made the decision that I knew he was going to come back, and I knew he was going to give me some bullshit on why he couldn't buy the house, because he didn't know that I knew that house is already sold. The house is already sold. And this is the part where I said, I'm gonna be honest, even though it's gonna make me look bad, because most women in their right mind would have been like, I'm out, and I didn't. So, sure enough, he came home. He didn't really say anything that day. The next day, I asked him about the house, and he said, my friend, the realtor, he was like, I'm talking to him because something's going on with the interest rate. And when he said that, I felt so much relief, because I knew that I had been prepared for he's going to give me some bullshit. So when he said there's something with the interest rate, I said, you know what? This is literally what I said, y'all. If the interest rate isn't good, then we shouldn't move there. We should probably let this house go. We should cancel whatever furniture we ordered, or appliances, and let's just look for another house. I said I would like to be moved before the end of the year. I said I really don't want to be 9 months pregnant moving into a house. I would like to be done with this before then. And the way I said it was so calm. And he was like, okay. He was like, I'm gonna call the friend, the realtor, and tell him I'm backing out of the house, and I'm gonna see if I can get my earnest money back. And I remember looking at him. I was standing in the kitchen, and I cocked my head to the side, and I said, okay, get your earnest money back, and let's find another house. And so that's how that first house fell through. So, fast forward, I keep looking at this to see how much time I have, because they only give you 10 minutes. So this is part 5, part 6 is coming up. But subsequently, what ends up happening the next week, which is mid-June, I was at work, and I started cramping, started bleeding.
Okay, and then she goes into the fact that she lost a baby. I thought this was one of the most profound moments of the whole series, really, because she has these streams of consciousness. There's this internal conflict in her, this dissonance.
Yes.
Because she's doing and she's behaving in a way that she knows is not beneficial for her. She is literally saying, I'm going to just be in denial. And denial does nothing but put you in more pain and suffering. And I mean, she really, really needed to get a therapist at that point. Anybody who's ever in that situation and you want to know what has to happen for me to get a therapist, it's moments like this, because she had to have had a big range of feelings about what was going on internally in her. It was causing her a lot of stress, to the point probably where she lost the baby because of the stress that the situation was giving her. And I think at that point, he consciously made the decision to be in denial early on in this relationship. That would have been the perfect exit point. As soon as she lost that baby, she should have lost that man right with it. But she continued to move on. I am not certain who wants to comment. Which one of you all want to comment on this first? Let's go to Ayana.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I see this all the time. And as therapists and coaches, right, we have to hold space and allow people to unfold in the way that they need to unfold. But I can't tell you how many times just hearing that, it just brings up for me. And I have such compassion, but also simultaneous frustration when I hear this kind of dynamic, because we always know, our gut knows. Our intuition knows what we need, and we know what's going on. There's something I share with my clients a lot around the fact that confusion is really not a thing. It's really not a thing. We come to therapists and to get advice and advice, because we don't give advice, but we come to, folks to get support, right? Thinking that we're confused, but really, once everything is laid out, you really know what's going on. You know what's going on, but the question is, what is it that needs to be cultivated? Is it courage? Is it, acceptance? Is it whatever it is? But there's not any confusion. So many times, women, and I will say this, just seeing, and it's not that men don't experience this as well, in relationship come in and, somebody, will come and say something like, I'm getting all these messages about cheating, but he said he didn't, but he said he didn't, but then the phone rang, and then the next day I saw this, and then, but he's saying he's not, and I don't, and then I just have to ask, so do you Do you think that he is? And there's just a quiet, because I don't think anyone has ever, like, they've not been able to really, let me just, yes, I think so.
And
Okay.
not only that, is what are your feelings toward that person for lying to you?
Yes.
She did
Yes.
not come to terms with her feelings.
No.
She had feelings about it. How
Right.
do you feel toward him for giving you a bold-faced lie and you knew he was going to lie?
Oh my goodness. But look, this is what I say to folks all the time. People have to, on some level, participate in that dynamic.
Yes.
They feel they have to participate, because if I get really clear and I get in touch with my feelings, then I probably have to do something about it. Then I need to be angry and act on that. I need to take care of myself and act on that. And I try to give people permission to say, hey, you can get clarity and still be kind of sitting there for a minute trying to figure out what you don't feel like, because you don't got to keep lying to yourself.
Yes.
And then about your situation, because as soon as you get clarity, you think you got to go out here and be superwoman. You're human, but we can't keep being in the space of fogginess, and people participate in the dynamic. It's just amazing to me what the mind will do. And it was quite, yeah, that was a very profound moment.
Very profound moment. Okay, who wants to go next? Niquan. Okay, Dr. Deborah, go ahead. What you got to say?
I just wanted to jump in here on this part, because you mentioned dissonance, right? Her kind of being torn in these two different spaces. And another aspect is going on there, where when you're interacting with a person with narcissistic traits, they often use coercive control. And coercive control is simply putting their victim in a position where they are dependent on them. And she was vulnerable, she was pregnant, and now she's a bit financially dependent on him. And so that certainly had to play a factor in this push-pull that she was experiencing. And of course, she's still having the desire to believe him, even though she's caught him in this bold-faced lie, and has now resolved that based on her dependence in this interaction, she has to surrender and just go with this. And she gave him the out.
Mm-hmm.
Gave him the out. Oh, yeah. He didn't even have to fight for it. She gave him the out. Right. And so that sense of that confusion that you guys were talking about. But I just wanted to add that part about the coercive control influencing that sense of dissonance, because at that point maybe she was feeling a little bit like I've made my bed, now I have to lie in it.
Yeah,
she wasn't even married to him yet. I mean, she didn't have to do, but anyway, we're not judging. But I just Niquan, what do you have to say? This denial, this disconnect from her feelings.
What this brings up for me is the framework that I utilize with my clients to educate them on trauma bonding. Yes. There's that false sense of hope, right, that you hold on to. So you get the wine and dining and all those things, but then that's the exception to the rule. And then you hold on to this false sense of hope that, the person's going to treat you well because they've done it before. Yes. Right. So in that initial 2-week wine and dine down to the Cheesecake Factory, no shade to the Cheesecake Factory because I go there. But wine and dine down to the Cheesecake Factory, and then she's holding on to that for so long. And then I'm curious about her relationship with rejection. Mm-hmm. And because if I accept this, then what does it mean? What is it like Ayana was saying, like if I have clarity on this, that he's a liar and all these things, I have to do something. What does that mean for me? What does that mean for me during COVID? Does it mean I got to go back to isolating? Right? Does it mean that, and I don't know what her experience was with that, but that could have been very traumatic. It was very traumatic for a lot of people. So having that clarity puts her in a very interesting place. Not saying it's, okay, but I understand it. Like I deal with it so often.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a great point, because for her to break up with him at this point probably would have been a little too overwhelming for her. Mm-hmm. It just would have been like, oh my God, how I got to get rid of him. I have to have these hard conversations. I have to shelter in place. At this point, COVID, it seems like there's no end in sight. I have to tell everybody that I knew that knew about our relationship and, me being pregnant, I'd have to potentially give all of this up, this hope and dream for what he promised you that first 2 weeks, wanting this to happen. Maybe she's thinking the rationalization. This is what wives go. This is not what wives go through in healthy relationships, by the way. We don't go through these things. Yes.
And when you guys were just talking, it made me remember the shame. We haven't talked about shame.
Yes.
Shame. She talked about being a church girl. She talked about the shame of even having lived with this man out of wedlock. Right. Now she's pregnant out of wedlock. That shame is
keep that stuck.
Yeah, because she would have to face all her family and all these people who she felt judged her in some way. And clearly, I don't know, I would wonder if she did get therapy, because she was smart enough. She seemed to be pretty intelligent, by the way, very good communication skills. She was smart enough to know what she was doing, to keep this video record of what was going on. She was smart enough to do that. And she was smart enough to know, you know what? I think I'm just going to have to just face it. So I wonder what she went through to get to the point where she really faced this, because there are a lot of people saying really awful things about her. I don't know how she's been able to go through this. There's some people in the chat. I see y'all in the chat. Hey, everybody. Hey, Mama Zeke. How you doing? Hey, team storytelling. I gotta say hello to everybody. Great storytelling. Yes, she was wonderful at telling stories. So, that was sort of like therapeutic. It was therapeutic for her. And she often reflected on that. She said, you know what, telling my story in this way, it's really making me feel better getting it out. So yes, it's for all of us to have this conversation. Yes, her telling the story can help a lot of other people, but it also helped her, because I think telling this is really kind of her way to get control of a situation that was out of control. And I thought she was very respectful, because she did not use real names. She did not use the names of people, other victims that she got in contact with. We don't have to talk about that. By the way, everyone, I would like to do a part 2 where we talk about Legion. What could be some things that would make somebody into this situation? I'm really curious about this, because he from what we can see, some of the things that he did, it seems like he came from a pretty normal family, because everyone else in his family didn't really seem quite Legionist, in this way as she did. So I think our part 2 may have to be diving into what the Legion side of it. If you guys would like to come back to talk about what's going on with Legion, but yeah, I really do think that she did not follow her gut, and she rationalized a lot of these things in her mind. Anybody else, before we go into my last question for tonight, because I've had you on here for almost an hour now, anything else that you guys would like to, any insights into Risha, anything that you guys would like to say before I go into my last question?
Well, I just wanted to mention, because you mentioned the audio diaries that she kept. And when you're in a relationship with somebody with narcissistic traits, that gaslighting and manipulation always makes us feel like we are disbelieving our own reality. And a tool, like, I was so happy that she was able to keep those diaries, because that was a tool to help her do reality testing. Because as you guys mentioned before, she didn't have a support system to actually do real life reality testing. So her being able to record that was probably something that helped her stay grounded, even though she's in the storm of this narcissistic storm that she was experiencing.
Yes, that is called reality testing. She was definitely, and then she had to have a hard conversation with herself about that. Anybody, anything else, Niquan or Ayana, anything you want to comment? Ayana, I see you nodding. I mean, Niquan, I see you nodding.
I'll piggyback off of Dr. Deborah. I want to remind people that although he told some tall tales, it was past tall tales, there were some truths in there. So that's where that, that kind of confusion, dissonance comes in, right? Because he was paying the bills. So she had this piece that she was holding on to, right? So if he's doing this, then maybe some of this can possibly be true, right? It's that's where that gaslighting comes in. There's a show that Tyler Perry had called "If Loving Me Is Wrong," If Loving Him Is Wrong, and there was a master narcissist on there, and y'all ain't seen it. Find it. It's not on air anymore, but master narcissist. Him and Legion got some similar traits.
So there's a lot of lesions out there. We gotta be careful with these lesions.
There
Definitely. That's our next topic. How to be careful, how to spot a lesion.
Yes.
Okay, Ayana, you want to say something?
I just want to say the thing that really stands out to me about her coming and telling her story, having gone through everything, right, is that we always have a choice. Like, we can go through the most traumatic of situations, but we always have a choice as to how we respond to what's happening in our life at any time. We can turn our story around, stand on top of it, and use it in a way to empower not only ourselves, but others, as you've already talked about, Dr. Alicia. And I just feel like oftentimes things can, I mean, she has a heavy story. That's a lot for her to go through and to deal with. And for sure, even though it may not always be as popular, she is a co-creator of that story. She is not a victim per se. She is a co-creator, and she has to be able to see that part so that she can actually heal and move forward. So to be able to come forward in that way is amazing. And if we can just take from that, oh my goodness, if she can do something like that, then how can we in our own lives talk about and speak our own truths, the things that we don't like about our experiences, about ourselves, the way that we have shown up, and the things that have happened to us that have been hurtful, and powerfully push through and share it with somebody else, because that to me is a huge sign that I really want to grow. I just want to be free. I don't want to be bound by this thing. And that was just really empowering to see, even if there were pieces where I'm like, oh my Lord, it's still empowering, and it's whole in terms of how she chose to do that.
Excellent. And Mrs. E Cares. Thank you for commenting, Miss E Cares. That is true. There's a lot of them out there, and we have to be conscious of that. Yeah, and they're not just men; they're women too. Some women can do some real vicious things. So anyway, thank you everybody for joining us. I got one last question for us to talk about. I just want to say hello to everybody in the chat. Let us know if you have a question for any one of us. Put it in the chat. Comments, put it in the chat. I want to play my last video. And this video is about, this is about her seeking what she calls marriage therapy. And I'm real curious to see. I'm just going to play part of it. She went to seek marriage therapy after a lot happens. Wait, hold on. Let me make sure I'm going to speed it up a little bit. So here we go. Okay. Oh, let me turn the sound up.
We agreed to do marriage counseling. I had found a pastor and his wife who agreed to do our counseling, basically. Our counseling was going to be on Zoom, and it was going to be every other week, every other Tuesday. Initially, Legion was participating in it. His body language seemed to be that he was open and receptive to the marriage counseling. Now, the pastor and his wife were deeply concerned at the fact that we had only been married 3 months, and we were already dealing with some form of infidelity. We were in marriage counseling, and as the pastor would put it, there seems to not be any sort of intimacy. They were concerned, rightfully so. I think any person would be if they knew what was going on within those 3 months. So the pastor and his wife, it is fair to note, we started counseling with them in the spring. We continued counseling with them up until a week before I found out what I found out, and he got kicked out. So one of the first things that the pastor kind of talked to us about was, what was the deal with the Facebook Messenger stuff? And Legion was like, it was stupid. I shouldn't have done it. It really was just attention, and I got carried away. He felt like he kept saying, I'm not going to keep apologizing. I'm not going to keep getting persecuted. After I told you, I'm sorry, I told you I wouldn't do it again, and I want us to move forward. You're either going to forgive me or you're not. Pastor and his wife were like, wow, the audacity is real on this one. So needless to say, we started moving slowly forward. It was always in the back of my mind, just like it was in the back of my mind with that black Dodge Charger. It was one of those things where, okay, I see how you kind of are moving and operating. He came to me a few days after we started our first counseling session, and he was like, we should get a joint bank account. What he wanted to do was to each one of us have our own account and to get a joint account for our money to go in there for joint expenses. Now, up until this point, he had been paying the rent, the utilities, and I really was just paying for my stuff. So now he's suggesting, look, we're married now, let's go ahead and get a joint account. I wasn't necessarily against it because I knew that I would still have my own account, I would still have my own savings. So what I countered with was, okay, let's take a look and see what we're working with. Show me your checking, let's look at each other's accounts. Look at what we have currently. He was cool with that. So he shows me his checking account. His checking account available balance was it was just over $9,600. Mine was just over $1,500. So there was a huge disparity in the amounts. And so he logged in on the phone and turned it towards me, and I could see available checking, available balance, just over $9,600. I logged into my savings. I showed him how much I had in savings. He picked up his phone, logged into his Chase savings, turned the phone towards me. In the Chase savings, it was roughly about $15,000. But I also knew that he told me he had a U.S. bank savings and he had an offshore savings. So at this point in time, I asked him, show me the U.S. bank savings, show me the other two accounts. He would not do it. This became a huge bone of contention. He would not show me the two accounts that he claims has the most money in there, the accounts that he claims has money for a house in there, because he still was mentioning, hey, we need to get on this house thing if we're going to move when the lease is up. So I'm just adamant on, why don't you want to show me your savings account? You showed me the Chase one, like, what is the big deal? And so he kept saying, he's like, there's a lot of money in there. And he was like, and my uncle always taught me, this is not the uncle that died, another uncle. My uncle always told me, just keep your money tight because women can be, I said, women, like, we're married. So go ahead and show it to me. He would not show it to me. So then we went back into marriage counseling, like the next session, and I bring it up. I said, he will not show me these two accounts that he claims has the money in there to buy a house. I told our pastor and his wife, I said, I saw the pre-approval letter, so I don't understand why he's not going to show me, to just put me at ease that he has the money in there. I had never questioned it before because, again, you tell me who in their right mind signs their name to a legally binding offer, an all-cash offer on a house, and they just do it willy-nilly. I don't know anyone that does that. So I actually never questioned what was in the savings because I clearly saw him sign his name to a $699,000 all-cash offer on a house. If you don't know what I'm talking about, please go back to the parts in this playlist where I talk about what he did when we were looking for a house. So the pastor and his wife were like, Legion, that's not his name, y'all, that's the nickname. Legion, why would you not show your wife your savings account? Like, what's going on here? And so he made up some bullshit. And I remember the pastor's wife was like, something ain't right. And so at this point, Legion kind of shuts down. He's just like, look, y'all are not going to tell me when and where I open up my accounts to show anybody the money I earned. I earned that money. I earned that money by playing football, blood, sweat, and tears. He went to this whole Denzel Washington monologue about how he earned that money. And no one is going to come in and tell him that he needs to open up the account. So then he starts talking about the ex-wife and how she tried to get money from him in the divorce back when they were in California. So now the pastor and his wife, their red flags are just like, whoa. So much so that the pastor's wife said, and I will never forget this, she said, I don't think you all are going to make it to January. What she was talking about is, I don't think y'all are going to make it a year. And I really, truly was like, we're going to make it. Like, of course we're going to make it. And she was just like, I don't have a good feeling about it. And so Legion's all defensive. He at this point, he's folding his arms and because remember, we're on Zoom, he's folding his arms and he's just like, I'm done with this. Like, I'm not going to get attacked because I'm not comfortable showing you the amount of money that I have. Money changes people. And I'm not comfortable. So he's playing that victim card. And so the pastor and his wife were like, we're still going to help y'all as much as we can. But so he was like, I'm not comfortable. And basically the pastor and his wife were like, look, we'll help y'all as much as we can. But there's some deep issues here. And, this is what they advised us. Had the two of you came to us for premarital counseling, we would have told you, do not get married. Y'all should not even be together. That is what the pastor and his wife told us in marriage counseling. If you two had come to us for premarital counseling, we would have told you, y'all should not even be together, let alone get married. But here we are. So we will help you guys as much as we can. But the pastor's wife was like, I don't have a good feeling that y'all are going to make it a year. Part 23.
Okay.
What the fuck did I...
All right. So this brings up the issue of pastoral counseling. And I just think public service announcement, pastoral counseling has its place. It's beautiful when you're struggling with internal spiritual issues, even in your marriage. However, pastoral counselors are totally, totally different from actual licensed therapist. Okay, I just want to say that licensed psychologists, social workers have to go through extensive education and training and therapeutic techniques and all of the research and the theory. We operate from a very strong emphasis on confidentiality. We have strict ethical guidelines that we have to. Pastoral counseling is just good with integrating spiritual and religious principles. And I think they do a marvelous job in that. I just don't want to talk terribly about them. But I think at some point, they may have, and you guys can talk about this on what you think it is. At some point, maybe pastoral counselors need to say, and I've seen many who say this, you need to talk to a professional therapist. Something is not right here. It's nice to look at situations and say, okay, maybe you should have done this before. But I think people really need to consider your unique needs and the differences between seeking an actual marriage therapist, which is not a pastoral counselor. Who wants to take this on first? Let's see. Maybe I'll go to Nikwan. What do you have to say about people who need therapy?
So, again, I want to echo what you just said. Pastoral counseling has its place and its value. I am a believer, right? However, what I'm advocating for anyone who wants to consult their pastors, that pastor who is not also a trained therapist, that's okay. But it's important to understand skill, right? You can go to a licensed therapist, like Miss E. Cares is saying. You can go to a licensed therapist that is like a Christian-based licensed therapist, where they can incorporate scripture and therapeutic skill. That therapeutic skill, though, is imperative. You can utilize scripture, and I do as well. However, when we're talking about effective communication skills, when we're talking about emotional regulation, when we're talking about infidelity, recovery and things like that, when we're talking about the foundation of what a healthy relationship is, these things are rooted in theory. And, those of us here, you're talking about thousands of hours of experience on top of our programs, right? So it's not to diminish pastoral counseling, but it's to understand that when you're wanting to heal your relationship, your generational dysfunction, repair, mind, body, soul, a lot of that, we have the skills to do that. And so use both, but definitely, therapy, understand that there's a difference.
Yeah, there is definitely a difference. And and the training is just total. I mean, even after you get your degree, your master's degree, you got more. That's when you start the work, right? You got to go and do quite a bit to get to where we are as licensed therapists. I see you nodding. Ayana, what do you have to say?
Yeah, I'm just resonating. Look, I'm a PK. My mother and father were they're retired pastors. My mom is a pastoral psychotherapist. She's a licensed social worker, a licensed professional counselor. She got a doctorate of ministry, and she did many of these things later on. And I said, when she told me, I'm going to get my social work degree. Now she already had a doctorate and an LPC, and she's going back to get her master's in social work and a doctorate in social work. And I said, well, she said, I just always been really jealous of social workers. I really want the information the way y'all get it. And so I share that because she's also a pastor, right? And so, but she'll be the first one to say, hey, it's the same with anything. Even let's be real, with therapists or even with somebody to do your hair. Everybody's not the same in terms of the skill they bring. So I just really want to echo what Nikwan lifts up, is that it's okay to ask your pastor. And that can be a really scary thing for people because there's such reverence for, our spiritual leaders to just say, kind of what experience do you have with my issue, or what would you say, just even bring forward and say, do you think I should perhaps see someone professionally as well? Or, doing some kind of vetting of what the experience is, because there are these days a lot of pastors and ministers who are licensed, and they do have, they're like social workers, or they have, but but that's not always the case, and we cannot make an assumption. And so I have to work on not rolling my eyes when people kind of conflate all the things, just like when somebody told me a little while back, and they're like, yeah, I do, you know what? I do social work too now. Yeah, and I was thinking, I didn't remember them going to school. I'm a social worker. I work at the social service office in the TANF. I said, I was like, no, baby, you're not a social worker. You know, but people get confused about the labels and about, you know, who does what. And I just think it's important for people to be able to ask the questions. And if your pastor or even if your therapist was uncomfortable with the asking of the questions, and that's information for you, you know.
It is. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing about you're a second generation therapist like myself. I
Yeah.
love it. And you know, Dr. Deborah, weigh in on the fact that if you had seen them, you quickly would have picked up on Legion's psychopathy. You quickly would have picked up on it and handled it in a totally different way. Talk about your position, Dr. Deborah.
So I don't actually see couples in together. So I defer to the couples experts in the room. But I think if I had been interacting with them, or especially with Legion, I definitely would have been able to identify the gaslighting. He was highly conflictual. He was very rigid. He was antagonistic. He was very victimy and super entitled. So he was showing all the behavioral characteristics of a fractured personality at minimum. So without any diagnosis, his personality was at minimum fractured. And so that would have been a place to work with them in terms of helping her identify, you know, kind of owning her own voice and recognizing that cognitive dissonance and maybe being able to see him for who he is instead of who she thought he was and wanted him to be. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I think if they had come to an actual licensed therapist, again, another missed point, but another lesson learned, another jewel for all of you guys out there who are watching this video. You know, there is something to the training. I don't think people know how much training and how many hours of supervised practice we have and how many years of experience. You can vet people, you know, and you know, going to your pastor is a good step, but it's definitely not the final step, particularly with the issues they were facing. So it was a missed opportunity for her yet again to deal with some of these internal struggles that she was having, knowing better. She said, she even talks about there were so many red flags that I ignored. And don't ignore them. Talk about them. You know, talk about it. If you don't feel comfortable talking about it with a friend or someone close to you, there's any one of us. There's 4 of us on the screen here that you can talk to about some of these things, and we can help you confirm what you already know, but also give you strategies on how to get out of situations. You know, pastoral counseling helps, but you know, we can also help you to remove yourself from situations that could have potentially been dangerous for this particular person. So anyway, it's been an hour. I just want to thank all of you all, the 3 of you all, for coming. I do want to talk about Legion next week, next Sunday. Anybody who's a therapist that want to join, all of you all are invited to join us next Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to talk about Legion. What was going on with Legion? So we'll talk a little bit more about him. Definitely not diagnosing him because we haven't seen him in a therapeutic sense, but just visual things that we understand about what he's done that everybody knows about, and then put some context to it, because I'm certain Legion came from a very interesting background. So we'll talk about that later. But before we wrap up today, I'll give you guys, let everybody know where to find you, how to reach out to you. We will start with Nikwan. Tell everybody last thoughts, and how to find you.
All right. So you can definitely find me. I'm the owner of Intimate Connections PLLC, and you can find me at that handle on all socials, Intimate Connections PLLC. And last thoughts are to make sure that you are doing the work to love yourself first. Because when you do that, when your cup is full, you're not looking for others just to fill it, and you're not operating from a place of emptiness and lack.
I love that. Love yourself first. Yes, love yourself first. That's beautiful. That would have definitely helped Tessa. Okay, let's go on to Dr. Deborah. tell everybody last minute thoughts and where people can find you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alicia. I've really enjoyed this conversation and us talking about and dissecting this situation from a clinical lens. And I'm just, I just want to point out that I'm so proud of Risa for taking that step of being vulnerable and telling her story so we can have this rich discussion here and actually hopefully be able to help people who might be still in that dissonance or just in that questioning phase of, am I in a challenging or difficult situation? So you can find me, find me on Instagram at the 3D Psychotherapy. And my website is 3dpsychotherapy.com if anybody wants to schedule an appointment.
Yes, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, and then Ayana Mayat.
All right. Yes. Everybody can find me on all things at Black Love and Marriage. My website is blackloveandmarriage.com. And I think the piece that just stands out to me is one of my mantras is that relationship work is personal work. All the work for our relationships comes down to our personal work. So let's just all be encouraged to look at self so that we can get the best out of our relationships.
Yes, I so agree with that. Yeah. Relationship work is personal work. And in a way, you can't even do the personal work unless you're in a relationship.
Yes. Yes. So you can really see yourself or somebody gonna see you.
That's right. So if you're a hermit by yourself, where's the growth in being a hermit?
That's right.
No growth in being a hermit. So thank you everybody for joining us. We have talked today about the viral video, TikTok video that came out last week. My daughter told me about it on TikTok and we sat and binged on it. And I was like, whoa, we have to do this conversation. So I thank the three of you for joining me here today to talk about who TF did I marry in her series. And I appreciate everybody for joining us today. Hello, everybody in the chat. Thank you for getting the chat as lively today. I really appreciate it. We're going to be talking about how to avoid legions, how to find these legions, what these legions look like, and how to avoid them. We're going to talk about that next weekend. So be sure to tune in next Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and we will be there. Okay? Goodbye, everybody.